Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for giving E1 some time here this morning. I'm excited to dive in and talking about the role that historical data plays in successful Dynamics 365 Business Central migrations. Just by way of an introduction, my name is Tyler Epping. I am the PopDoc evangelist here at E1 Solutions. My role is primarily in the pre-sales realm. I do a lot of product demos for our PopDoc product, do training, occasionally jump into support. So I work with the product quite extensively, and we're going to be talking about that as part of our solution that we commonly see with regards to preserving and accessing historical data once you move to Dynamics 365 Business Central. Just to give you a little bit of an agenda of what we're going to be going over here today, I have a handful of different PowerPoint slides that I'm going to go through the start, but I primarily am going to be demoing our E1 tools and where it fits into the historical data conversation with regards to migrations. But before that, I just want to highlight some of the challenges with regards to historical data when you're looking at it from the scope of trying to move that into your new system, so Business Central. We're also going to quickly highlight why historical data is important, why being able to access that once you've moved to Business Central provides value for obviously your business. We'll talk about the right way to access your historical data, or maybe present, is there a right way? I'll really highlight that with our tools, we provide a couple of different scenarios that allow you to access your historical data once you move into Business Central. And then we're going to spend most of the time going through a demo where I'll show you where our tools fit into migration scenarios. Couple of housekeeping things. We do have the questions panel and chat open, so we should have some time at the end to go through questions. So if you do have those, feel free to post them in the chat or the questions section, and I will try to go through some of those at the end of the webinar. Before we get into talking about some of the challenges, when we talk about migration, we really here at E1 kind of break the data that we're migrating into three different buckets. So I just wanted to quickly highlight that. There's really three kind of categories of data that occur in all migration scenarios. It's not just migration, moving your historical ERP to Business Central. You see this with other systems as well. It could be CRM migrations or help desk solution migrations. The first two, master data and opening balances, this is the data that you need to move into your new system once you, or so that you can begin transacting again. So your master data includes your customers, your vendors, your items, things of that nature. Anything that you need to drive transactions, as you can see at the bottom. The other one is opening balances, and this is again anything you need to really transact against after the move. So opening GL balances, open AR, things of that nature. So these are both requirements that do need to be moved into your new system, so that when you move to Business Central, you can take off and get started. But you'll notice the last category is historical data, and this is really the section that we're going to be focusing on today. This is really anything from the past that you need to look up but aren't importing into the new system. And we're going to, I guess, kind of break down, again, some of the challenges if you are considering trying to move all that data into the new system, but also present some solutions with regards to how E1 can help with our tools and giving you access to that history right inside of Business Central once you migrate. So when it comes to the challenges with historical data, I've kind of broken it out into a couple of different buckets: data incompatibility, data quality, and then as a result of those two things, there's some cost implications. When it comes to data incompatibility, whenever you're moving an existing application and trying to move into a new one, there's naturally going to be some incompatibility issues. Your old system is not your new system, so it isn't 100% match to be able to bring that old data into the new system, which then creates quite a bit of complexity. So if you have potentially some customizations in your old system, how does that handle if you're trying to move that history into the new system, or data, even smaller things as data format mismatches. If a date field in your existing system is one way, and then moving to the new system it is a different way. It provides some unique complexity that makes it a big challenge when you're considering trying to fit your historical data into that new application. Another big thing is data quality. When we talk about migration scenarios, this is really your opportunity to take a look at your business processes and evaluate if there are any changes that you potentially can make. You also it gives you the ability to clean up your data so that you have a fresh start moving into your new application. So you can do things like handle duplicate records and handle missing values or inconsistent data. You may have some retired data that you don't use. So you might have some companies. That's a really common one that we see in migration scenarios. Customers might have some companies from their historical database, and the thought of just moving that data into your Business Central without having any plan for trying to transact against it once you move doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because that data is outdated or is retired. So as you can see, just with regards to trying to fit historical data into the new application, there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of challenges just with trying to get all of that data over there and making sure that it matches in a way that you understand from what you experience in your historical application. Now, with those two things, there are cost implications. So trying to move all of that data into the new application, that can create a very expensive migration project, not only in terms of time, but also money. There's also cost implications when you consider trying to store all that data in the new system, as it's going to take up storage just for historical lookup purposes, or using it for business decisions going forward. On the flip side of that, there's also considerations of if you don't move it into the new system, are you going to have to continue maintaining the server that it's on and have licenses to access that data? So there are a couple of different pieces of cost implications that result or that come as a result of the complexity that historical data presents with regards to considering moving that data into your new application or Business Central. But that being said, there's still a lot of importance and value in that historical data. Obviously, you've built up all that data inside of your existing system, so you should have the option of taking it with you or having an option of being able to access it so that you can have effective business decision making, whether that's comparing historical detail from prior years to current years so that you can do proper forecasting or budgeting going into future years. There's a lot of processes that come as a result of being able to analyze and have access to your historical data. Another really big one that we hear commonly at E1 is what if my customer calls in and they want information on an invoice that they paid or an order they created a couple years back. We need to be able to service that customer and support them and give them answers to the questions that they're asking. So customer service and support becomes a very important piece as to why accessing historical data is very important. As you want to provide that customer service and be able to answer those questions for any customer interactions that you might have. And the other big one that we hear commonly here at E1 is the legal and regulatory piece to it. Commonly in the United States, you hear, we need to retain 7 years of history for internal and external audits. But that can change quite a bit depending on the industry that you're in. Some industries require you to retain historical data much longer. whether that's in the healthcare industry, or also like automobile industry, or automotive, I should say. A lot of those industries require historical data access, or being able to look up history for a much longer time frame. And then also, depending on the country you live in, there might be additional requirements that make being able to preserve your historical data extremely important, so that you, in the event you do get audited, have access to it, and can report to those auditors from that history. So when it comes to the right way to access historical data, you ultimately have options. Now, this slide is really from the perspective of how E1 can help. We present a couple of different ways that don't require you to move that data into the new system. With our tools, you have, as you can see, a couple of different options where our tool PopDoc can access that historical data, and then we can surface it right inside of Business Central when you need it. So these are a couple of the common ones that we see. One of them is, if you are coming from an on-premise application, is continuing to maintain the SQL Server that application is on. Now, there are some maintenance and licensing considerations that come into play. Oftentimes, we do see that people that are migrating to Business Central in the cloud, they don't want to continue maintaining that server, which then brings us to a couple of the other options below. You can move that data to an Azure SQL instance. Obviously, it would move that data off your on-premise database. There still would be some cost implications with regards to that. As you can see, the third one down there, Azure Data Lake. This is the approach we commonly see people do, as we have a tool, which I'll be highlighting in a little bit, that essentially can move your historical data from your on-premise system to a data lake. If you're not familiar with a data lake, it's really just cost-effective blob storage that sits in the cloud. As you can see, roughly 1 terabyte of data comes out to about $20 a month in terms of storage costs, so it's very cost-effective. Data lakes also can really hold any types of data, but we'll be talking about the type that we move using our tool here shortly. As you can see that point below there, we have a tool called our PopDoc Data Lake Upload tool, which can migrate your historical data to a data lake, and then where you give you the ability to access that right inside of Business Central when you want to see it. The last point that I brought up here is using Azure Synapse. Now, we use this in conjunction with our Azure Data Lake functionality, and this is really for scenarios where we're working with really, really large data sets. So you might have, a couple gigabyte list, and if you want to start joining that together with other lists of data, our Synapse option becomes a really effective way to optimize being able to access data for extremely large data sets. So I put that on there as an option, as that's another way that we can query that data and present it inside of Business Central that works in conjunction with our Azure Data Lakes. Now, you'll notice that these scenarios kind of assume that you're coming from an on-premise application. We do also see customers migrating to Business Central from another cloud-based system. So if you are someone that falls into that bucket, then we still have options for trying to evaluate the best approach. If you, I guess, do fall into that bucket, I would encourage you to contact our sales team, and we'd be happy to set up a call, and we can investigate what would be the best option for being able to access your historical data once you've moved to your new application. So where do our E1 tools fit in? So the two tools that we primarily use when we talk about historical data all kind of fall under our PopDoc bucket. So one of them is our PopDoc Data Lake Upload tool, which I'll provide a demo of here shortly. What it essentially does is it can archive on-premise historical data. You'll notice that there's a handful of different options that are built within the tool where we can move data from Dynamics GP, Dynamics SL, NAV, or really anything that's SQL based, can archive it to a data lake, and then we can surface that data using PopDoc, which you see below there, right inside of Business Central. PopDoc is the tool that allows us to query data from an Azure Data Lake. I'll talk a little bit more about what PopDoc is in a little bit, but the concepts that I wanted to highlight is one called virtual integration. It's this idea of being able to display data from an application inside of another without having to move the data between the two. So when we talk about historical data and surfacing inside of Business Central, we're not actually moving all of that history into Business Central, as you can, as I mentioned as in a previous slide, the complexity around that and the challenges. We're actually just querying the data from wherever it's sitting and giving you a live look right inside of Business Central. The other piece that PopDoc provides is cross-app reporting. We have custom list capability that allows you to merge together and join together data pointing to two different places. So a really common scenario that we see in historical data conversations is people want to see a combined view or a merged view that's showing their historical data with ongoing data inside of Business Central, and that's something that PopDoc can accomplish. I did also add a little bullet under there that it can handle data translations. As we had talked about in the challenges section, oftentimes in migration scenarios, you are taking this opportunity to reevaluate your processes, and there might be changes to some of the account structure going into your new system. So one common question that we get asked is, well, if you're using custom lists to combine or merge data together, what happens if the account structure for your GL accounts or your customers or your vendors change between the two systems? And that's something that PopDoc can handle. So there's a couple of different approaches that we can take with regards to that, but it's a very common scenario that we see in these migration scenarios. And then the last piece that I wanted to point out is Smart Connect. Now, we don't use this as much in the context of your historical transaction level data. It's really used for master data, moving master data and opening balances like we had mentioned on that first slide into the new system, which still technically comes from a historical perspective. So I did want to add that on there. Is when it comes to migrations, if you look at it as a whole, E1's tools can really handle all types of data in those migration scenarios. So with that, I am going to pivot a little bit, and I am going to jump into product. I'm going to show you kind of the experience and the tools that we use with regards to historical data. So let me change the screen here. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to be showing or talking about is our PopDoc Data Lake upload tool. Again, this is the tool that we use to essentially archive your historical data if you're coming from an on-premise system to a data lake, and then we can surface it right inside of Business Central from there. There's a couple of different processes that we can run for this upload tool. So as I mentioned, we have processes for Dynamics GP, Dynamics SL, Dynamics Nav, and really anything that is SQL based. So if you have additional application, or you might just be working on an application that is SQL based, that isn't one of those top 3 Dynamics options above, then you can utilize this tool to essentially archive that data to a data lake, and then we can present it inside of Business Central. Now, I'm going to be using the first option here for Dynamics GP. And one thing I will point out, if you are on Dynamics GP and evaluating that move to Business Central, there's 2 different processes that we would run for GP. One of them can copy all of your smart lists. So any standard smart list that you might have, anything that you've built with Smart List Builder or Smart List Designer. We also would run a second process, which would copy all the tables and views. And this would just really give you kind of the full database backup if you did decide you no longer wanted to keep maintaining the server that GP is on once you've moved to Business Central. This is our way of being able to capture all of that data before you potentially turn off that server. But the example that I'm going to run through here is just copying smart lists. And I just want to show kind of the different screens that you would go through with if you were to utilize our tool. Once you've selected the process, you would then sign into your PopDoc account, which I've already done so. It would then also, if you have multiple accounts that you're tied to, you would then select which account that you want to tie this to, so that the data is available inside of that account once we've ran the tool. The next step is setting up or connecting to your storage account. So prior to this, you would have already set up an Azure data lake. This is something that you as a customer would provision. Now, if you have questions about setting that up, we do have guidelines that we can provide. So I would encourage you to reach out to our team, and we'd be happy to share over some documentation that would walk you through the steps for setting up a data lake. But essentially what we're doing here is we're selecting the connector inside of PopDoc that we've created that will contain these lists that we're running, and then we're selecting or putting in information with regards to our data lake. Once you've connected to the data lake, we're now connecting to our database. So this is how we are hooking into our Dynamics GP environment. One thing that I'll point out is this PopDoc data lake upload tool is a tool that's available to download on our website. It doesn't need to be installed on the same machine as the server that GP is on, but it does need to be able to connect to it within your network. So just wanted to point that out. But we're essentially just selecting what version of GP that we're running on, and then putting in the credentials for the server that GP is on, so that we can connect to the system database and the additional company databases. Once you've connected to the database, it then will ask you what companies you want to archive. So if you potentially have some test companies that you don't want to move data from, or there are some companies that you don't want to archive to the data lake, you can manually go through and select which companies you want our tool to extract data for and move to your data lake. And then the last thing, once you've selected companies, you'll select list. Now, what this is pulling, we again selected the copy smart list process. So it's pulling any standard smart list that's within your GP environment. It's also pulling any things that you've built, any smart lists you've built with Smart List Builder, Smart List Designer. So they're all available to access in here. Now, normally in a real life scenario, we'd recommend going through and evaluating obviously what smart list you want to bring over. As you can see, you can select all, it can grab everything, but you likely have some smart lists that you've never used or haven't used in a long time. So now is a good time in kind of that evaluation phase to take a look and see, which smart lists are being used, which ones would we benefit for being able to access when we move to Business Central, and then you can manually go through and select which ones you want to move. I'm just going to pull a couple of these just to show you an example here. I'll just do these three. And then we're going to click run. So what our tool is doing, it's connecting to that Dynamics GP environment, and the process that we're running is connecting to the smart list. So it's extracting the data out of every single smart list that we selected, and then it is converting it into a CSV file, and then it is pushing it up into the data lake that you guys provisioned. At the very end of the run, you receive this report, and it just lets us know the success status of any list that the tool tried to move. So you can see that the three lists that I moved in this case were all successfully moved. There are a couple of other statuses that you might see in our PopDoc data lake upload tool. One of them is a failure status. If you do have any failures on any smart list, you do have the ability to take a look at what the error was. You can either do that. There would be a little icon here that gave you kind of a brief description of that error, or you could view the logs to get more detailed information. There's also another status that you would see, a skip status. Our tool automatically recognizes any lists or tables or views that have no data in them. So if it does notice that no data is within any of those lists, the tool will recognize that and skip over those. But once you see the success status, what this essentially means is this list was successfully archived to a data lake. And from there, we're able to connect to it with PopDoc, which I'll be showing you here in a second. And then we can surface that data right inside of Business Central. So switching gears, let's talk about PopDoc really quick. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with what PopDoc is, PopDoc at its core is an end-user driven ad hoc query tool. When we talk about using PopDoc in migration scenarios, migration is really, or historical data migration is really um, a single avenue that PopDoc can provide. And it's really just by default of what PopDoc is. Again, by nature, it's this end user driven ad hoc query tool that really asks you two different questions of your data. What data do you want to see? Where do you want to see that data? And where it all starts is by setting up connectors. We essentially want to set up a connector for any application that we query data from. Today, we have around 50 different connectors out of the box, different ERP connectors, CRMs, help desk solutions, marketing automation platforms. We have database connectors, and then we also have our data lake connectors as well. So obviously in the context of what we would be setting up in a historical data conversation is if we used our tool to migrate that data to a data lake, we would set up an Azure data lake connector in order to be able to connect to any of those historical lists or tables or views that we moved up there. In addition to that, being that we are moving to Business Central, we would likely also set up a Business Central connector so that we could then query that Business Central data. And then from there, we then opens the door for that custom list capability of being able to merge together data from your history and ongoing data from Business Central, which I'll show you an example of that here in a second. But once we've essentially identified a list that we want to see, we ask you, where do you want to see that data? So I really want to highlight what that experience would look like inside of Business Central. There's a couple of different ways that we can present historical data inside of BC. One is using our main extension. So we actually have an extension out on Microsoft's App Source that can be installed directly into your Business Central environment. And what this is in PopDoc terms is what we call a multi-list widget. So as the name suggests, it's a widget that contains multiple lists. If I hit this drop-down menu here, you can see there's a bunch of different categories of data that are either pointing to this live Business Central system, or it is displaying lists of data that are pointing to an entirely different environment. So a lot of these standard groups, these are just live BC groups and lists. So we have financial-based lists, fixed assets, inventory, marketing, purchasing, sales, project, people. Those are all lists that are displaying Business Central data. But you also notice that we have data pointing to entirely different applications. I mentioned that PopDoc can connect to a wide range of different systems. So we have a handful of scenarios where we're pointing to a CRM system or a Salesforce environment. And then what we're focused on here today is migration scenarios. So here's a handful of categories of historical systems that we've are either connecting to on-premise, or we've migrated data to a data lake, and we're surfacing that right inside of Business Central. Now, before I show you an example of one of those historical lists, I just want to give you a quick tutorial of the PopDoc interface. The big thing that I like to point out is it doesn't matter where we're querying this data from. So this data displayed in this list that you're seeing could be, Business Central data, or it could be a historical list sitting in a data lake. Anytime that we access a list of data within our PopDoc interface, the end user experience is going to be the exact same thing. So things that you can do, or a user can do very easily, is they can grab additional columns. So they can select which fields they'd want to bring in. PopDoc would then go re-query this list to grab those additional fields. You'll notice that I selected 3 fields that have no data in them. So if I wanted to remove those from my list, I have the ability to do so. Everything inside of this interface is all drag and drop. So if I wanted to move document date to the front of my list, I can do so. I can also do things like grouping. So if I wanted to group my purchase transactions by vendor name, you'll notice when we do a grouping, all of the lines are expanded, or all the groups are expanded by default. But I do have the ability to collapse all of them to see more groups within my screen real estate. I then have the ability to drill into any of the groups to see the records that make up that group. And you'll notice where all of these groupings, you get subtotaling by grouping as well. And you can have multiple levels of these groupings. So if I wanted to group by vendor name, subgroup by document type, again, you get that subtotaling at each level. And then you have the ability to drill into the lowest level to see the transactions that make up that group. Inside of this interface, filtering is wicked easy. We give you the ability to have an unlimited number of filters on any of your lists. So you can hit this plus button as many times as you'd like to apply as many filters as you want. You can do things like mix your ands with your ors. Just a lot of power in terms of being able to ask questions of your data. Oftentimes with the filter, you might be working around a date field. And just to show you, we give you a ton of different restriction types you can use. You might be using a between, trying to filter on a date range. We also have these built-in compare fields, which are relative date filters, so it allows you to do things like filter on last week's transactions or last year's transactions, where you don't necessarily have to apply a fixed date range every single time. And once you've applied filters, you can hit save, and then again, PopDoc would then go requery the list wherever it's whatever the source is to bring back the data with those filters applied. There's additional functionality built into here where we can do things like favorite a list, which is essentially going to save your configuration of your list. We have the ability to export, so if you prefer working with your data in Excel, it is pretty easy to get any list out to Excel. We can do things like make these lists a multi-company list. So if you have multiple companies in your historical application, or if you'll have multiple companies inside of Business Central, we have the ability to make any of these lists a multi-company list using that drop-down menu. When we do add an additional company, essentially what PopDoc is doing is it's going to requery whatever list we've selected for that additional company. And when it returns, you'll notice that a new company field got added. It's just telling us what company these transactions are coming from. So if I scroll down here, you'll notice that there's a break, and I'm presenting data from 2 different companies all within one view. The last thing that I'll just quickly point out on this interface in terms of the usability is a concept we call details. Details are really powerful in that they allow us to join or link together related data sets. So you'll notice at the bottom here, I have a couple of different carets. This lines caret, for instance, if I select it and then select one of the records within my main list, what I'm showing here are the lines that are tied to this specific document number. So it really presents you with a couple of different ways that you can really get at the detail of your data, right? We could very well just pull up a purchase purchase order lines list that would show this line level detail, or we can present it as it pertains to a transaction level list as well. Anytime that we have a link between the data sets, we can tie that data together and present it within a single interface. So again, the big thing when we talk about querying data within a PopDoc interface is that the end user experience doesn't change no matter where the data is coming from. So I'm going to pivot here and I'm going to show you an example of a historical list. So we'll use this GP one here, and I'll just pull, we'll do an account transactions list. In this case, this data is now sitting in a data lake. So this data does not live inside of Business Central. We used our tool to essentially archive it to a data lake and then are essentially surfacing it inside of Business Central when you need to see it. You'll notice that it still looks like the same type of list of data, despite it now being pointing to a completely different source. You still have all that functionality of being able to add columns, filter it down, you can refresh it, you can move things around. It's all that same functionality, just pointing to a different location. But taking this a step further, I mentioned that PopDoc gives you the ability to have custom list capability. So this is an example of one of the custom lists that we commonly see in migration scenarios, where people want to see a combined view or a merged view of their history with ongoing data inside of their new system. So this is a custom list that you have the ability to build inside of PopDoc that does just that. In this case, we've taken a sales line items GP smart list and we've merged it together with a live sales lines list from this Business Central environment. Now, when we create merge lists with PopDoc, one of the default columns that gets created is this source connector column. It just basically tells us where these records live or what system they come from. So you'll notice that the whole first page here, it's showing data from this live Business Central environment. But if I go over a couple hundred records here on the bottom and scroll down, There you go. You'll notice that that changes. And I'm now presenting a merged view of historical data alongside ongoing data from my new Business Central application. So when it comes to history, you really have a couple of different options of how you want that data to be presented. If you just want to see standalone historical lists, as I mentioned, you have the ability to add those as is from a data lake or potentially directly to the source if you're still maintaining it, that on-premise system. And we can surface that history as is without combining it with ongoing data in the new system. But if you do have a need for giving more of a life-to-date view of your historical data with ongoing data, then that's something that PopDoc can accomplish as well, as we give you that custom list capability where we can do joins and merges and present a single view and more of a life-to-date view of your data. Okay. So taking this one step further, there's a couple of other places inside of Business Central where we can help spin up and surface historical data. With PopDoc, we give you quite a bit of flexibility in that we can publish these PopDoc widgets, which is what you're seeing here, really to any page inside of Business Central that displays a single entity. So I'm going to jump over to a customer card here, and I'm using Aaron Fitz Electrical as my customer. And as you might have seen, if I scroll down on this customer card, you'll notice that I have this additional detail fast tab. And inside of it, what you're seeing, this interface is a PopDoc interface that we've published to this page. The type of list that you're seeing is a very similar list that you just saw in that last example. It's a merge list of sales line items, combining historical GP data with ongoing data from this Business Central environment. Now, the cool thing is when we embed these widgets to the different pages inside of Business Central is we can actually pass values through. So you'll notice that this list is pre-filtered. It's only showing me transactions that are tied to this specific customer number. If we jumped over to a different customer inside of Business Central, you would still see an additional detail tab, but inside of it, the data contained within the widget would again be restricted to whatever customer card that we're on. So this is really another way of providing a more contextual view of data to the different pages inside of Business Central. So this is an example that I have on a customer card. I could do the exact same thing with a vendor card, right? So in this example, rather than showing sales lines that are tied to a customer, we now are showing vendor ledger entries that are tied to this vendor. And again, it's that merged view where we're showing live Business Central data with historical data that's sitting in a data lake that we've archived from a NAV database. But then from there, we still give all that same functionality of working with the data. You can add columns, you can filter, you can move things around. You'll notice a couple of the icons are missing, and that's not because you aren't able to all have all that same functionality. Essentially, when we embed these widgets inside of Business Central, you can control what functionality you want to give your end users. So in this example, we've just disabled that export functionality, but if we wanted to enable it, it's easy to do just as a single mouse click that you would do inside of PopDoc. So when it comes to these contextual views of data, you really have the ability of selecting what data you want to see. Again, the two examples that I've showed you are using that custom list capability to merge historical data with ongoing data in the new system. But if you wanted to just see a contextual view of just historical data, you can select that to be the list that's displayed inside of this PopDoc widget. I'll also point out that you can have more than one of these fast tabs inside of the different pages. We also have an option of being able to embed inside of a fact box, which is this section over here. It would present the data a little bit differently. It would be more of a card style display of your data, whereas this one's giving more of a list. But you could have multiple fast tabs and multiple fact boxes that might be pointing to different lists of data, and you can present them all on the same page. So that should give you a kind of a high level overview of kind of the demo that I wanted to provide, really just highlighting one, how do we help you move your data or how do we help you archive that? What are your options for being able to connect to that with PopDoc? Again, we do have the ability to connect to a lot of these historical on-premise applications directly to the server. If you do plan on continue maintaining that server, that is certainly an option. However, oftentimes we do see people wanting to eventually get rid of that server once they've moved to Business Central, which is where our PopDoc Data Lake upload tool becomes really valuable. And then it can archive all of that historical data to a data lake. And then with PopDoc, we can access it, present it right inside of Business Central, and then you do have the option from there of selecting how you want to visualize it. Do you want to see it as just standalone history, or do you want to combine it with ongoing data from your Business Central environment, and then taking a step further, deciding where inside of Business Central you want to see it, whether that's using that main extension that we have or embedding it on more contextual pages inside of your Business Central environment. So with that, I am going to pivot back into, one second here. Into the PowerPoint. And I'm going to check the questions panel here. Let me see. Okay. So the first question that I see, how to keep data when the GL structure or the GL structure and reporting structure is going to be completely different in the new BC system. So yeah, that's a great question. So that's where that translation piece comes into play that I had mentioned that PopDoc can handle. There's a couple of different approaches to it. Oftentimes you have some sort of translation file that maps the old account structure to the new account structure. Essentially, we need to give PopDoc access to that. So a lot of times, if you're coming from an on-premise system, people will put that into the SQL side of things, and then when our upload tool archives that data to a data lake, it picks up that mapping, right? And then from there, we can then do the merge list as is, where we have that old account structure mapped to the new account structure in those lists, so that we can very effectively do the merges there. Now, the other option too is if you have that like a physical mapping file, we can also manually upload that into your data lake. Once it's in the data lake, PopDoc can access it. We would then, rather than jumping directly into a merge list, we would do a join list, another custom list option within PopDoc to essentially join that mapping in, and then from there we would be able to complete the merge. So that's a really common thing that we see in migration scenarios, and there's a couple of different approaches as to how we can handle that. Let's see here. To what extent can permissions be applied to limit who has access to what historical data? That is a great question. I'm actually going to quickly show that. Give me 1 second here. Let me switch back to the demo. Okay. So inside of PopDoc, we have our own security model where you essentially can set up users, and it gets really granular and to the extent of you can essentially select what list of data, what companies a user can access from a connector. So we have this model inside of there, but we also have a type of user called an API user, where we essentially can create this API user and pass a token to the user. And once with that token then will connect to security permissions within the PopDoc web application. So once we've done that, inside of PopDoc, inside of Business Central, if I go into this PopDoc menu, we have a PopDoc setup menu where we essentially can apply a token to a user. So if you want to grant specific permissions in terms of data access to specific users inside of your Business Central environment, you can very easily set that up. And can do it on a user by user basis. Or we also have another feature inside of PopDoc called Teams, where you could create a team if you have a group of users that should share the same security privilege or data access privileges. You could create a team and then also pass a token to that team and then apply that token to those individual users inside of Business Central. So yeah, you have control of being able to determine what users can see what when they're working with historical data or ongoing data inside of BC. That's a great question. Let's see here. Is there a way to remove data from the data lake as the years pass to maintain the number of years of historical data? So we don't have a way of, I guess with PopDoc, there wouldn't be any like data purging from the data lake. However, what you could do is use the really end user experience of working with the data to create favorites. So if you wanted to, filter out years that no longer need to be maintained or need to be accessed, you could do that. We also have a custom list option inside of PopDoc called a restriction list, where you can restrict data from a list. So that would be another option for being able to, restrict out data from years past if you didn't want that data showing when you were accessing it in any of the PopDoc interfaces. Let's see here. Did E1 have a accounting ERP in the, or did E1 have an accounting ERP in the past? So we don't like make an accounting ERP, if that's the question. We work with a bunch of them. Our products originally came out of the Dynamics GP space, but we've since then expanded, and our products can be used with a wide range of different ERPs as well as other applications as well. So we have the ability to integrate and report off of data from a wide range of different accounting platforms, ERP platforms, whether that's those on-premise ones, GP, SL, CRM, or NAV, or Business Central, as well as other ones outside of the Microsoft stack as well. What about migrating developments or additional tables? For example, if you have customizations in GP. So our tool will pick up any custom tables as long as they're within that GP environment. Oftentimes people will have smart lists inside of GP that have some of those custom fields. When we archive those smart lists, they would essentially pick up those customizations. But yeah, as long as the data is within that GP environment, we can pick up those custom tables. Can I see the historical GP data as I see in the same place in tables as current BC data? I'm not, I think hopefully I showed that with kind of that merge list and being able to then embed historical data with BC data on the different pages inside of Business Central. But yeah, essentially you can use PopDoc to merge together data, historical data, from GP, and then ongoing data inside of Business Central. And then from there, we can publish those widgets, as what we call them in PopDoc, to different pages inside of BC. So if you want to see, a merged view of historical data with ongoing data in BC on the customer or on the vendor, things of that nature, we have the ability to publish those. You need to have PopDoc license on BC to see historical data. So with regards to setting up our extension in there, we do need to have a connection to, or a BC connector set up inside of PopDoc. Now, if you don't want to use PopDoc to, I guess, query that BC data from there, you could then essentially remove any, BC list from any of the widgets that you're using and just surface historical data. So that is an option. How does PopDoc compare to the Dynamics GP History app in BC? So if I'm thinking of the one that you're thinking of, there is a tool that you can migrate some of the GP tables into tables inside of Business Central. I think the big thing with PopDoc is we're not essentially moving all of that history into Business Central. We are archiving it to a data lake, so you're not taking up any storage inside of BC. We also give you the ability to grab everything. So if you have custom fields, if you have custom extensions, PopDoc can pick that up. The other big thing too is the different processes that we run for Dynamics GP. Obviously, we can pick up the tables and any views that you might have, but we can also migrate smart lists. And generally, that's kind of the more user-friendly option that people are used to with regards to accessing data inside of GP. So we see a lot of people benefiting and really wanting to being able to preserve those historical smart lists, which is another thing that our PopDoc tool is able to archive and then surface right inside of Business Central. Can you drill down into the historical transaction in Business Central? So if the data doesn't exist inside of Business Central, we wouldn't be able to drill down into it. That being said, we can use PopDoc to surface that historical data using kind of the PopDoc interface. So if you had, a historical transaction, we would be able to pull a list of all those transactions, and then you could from there filter it down so that you're only viewing the transaction in question. And then taking that a step further, that's really where that detail capability comes into play. You could either access the line item list, so the detail list, or you could use details to tie that data together to like a header type list. So if you wanted to pull a list of sales transactions and you wanted to see, for instance, the lines that might be tied to one, we could create those details inside of PopDoc to do that. So does the data lake reference the old GP table IDs? So if we were to run that Dynamics or inside of our PopDoc data lake upload tool, if we were to run the tables and views process, those IDs would then be essentially what would be named within your data lake. And then from there, that's what our PopDoc tool, if we were to run those or access a table, would be able to display the table ID name. Yep. So if you want to have a report joining historical GP and actual BC data, is it possible? Yes. That would be what that merge list can accomplish. So I have a couple other minutes here. There are some more questions, and I'm trying to get to them, but I don't know if I'm going to get to all of them in time. I've got a couple of quick just closing things. So if there are questions that I missed, if you want to email those into sales@e1solutions.com, we can then answer those, or we can get in touch with you to answer those. One other one that I just wanted to quickly talk about that I see here, is there a way to view attachments from GP's document attach window? So the answer is yes. If you have attachments that are stored with GP doc attached inside of GP, our tool can actually archive those attachments to a data lake, and then we can actually surface those attachments inside of Business Central as like a download from the data lake. So that is something that our upload tool can accomplish. And then yes, this webinar is recorded. Okay, so let me quickly do a couple of other things. So I just wanted to quickly highlight a couple of upcoming webinars that we have. I'm not the trainer on all of these. We do have some other individuals from our training staff that will be doing a couple of these, but other use cases with regards to accessing data inside of Business Central. So we have one on May 28th, 5 things your D365 business, or 5 things your D365 Business Central developers hate and how to help them. Powerful dimension reporting in D365 Business Central for any use case. And that one's on June 18th. And then we also have another one, simplifying integration for D365 Business Central on-premise on July 16th. So I encourage you to go to our website. If you go to the events section, you can register for these webinars, get them on your calendar, as they are going to be providing a lot more helpful information with regards to accessing data inside of Business Central. So with that, I want to say thank you for those of you that made it for the full webinar. Again, if you have additional questions, or if there's any that I missed that I didn't get answered, please reach out to sales@e1solutions.com. We're happy to get those answered. But I hope you guys were able to take away kind of the power of PopDoc with regards to accessing or archiving and preserving your historical data once you've moved to Business Central. So thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your week.